Hello guys, and with each day it becomes more and more obvious that back in 2022 Russia has successfully activated a self-destruction program. They claimed they want new territories when in reality they demonstrate they have a lot of unnecessary people. If you have a look at the number of Russian losses and compare it to the number of Russian gains, please keep in mind Kursk and special military operation of Ukraine there. You can clearly see Russia does not care about its people. But since recently they also do not care about North Korean soldiers and most importantly their generals. Since the start of the invasion they've lost more than a dozen. And it seems like the first strike of storm shadows inside Russia brought us some really good results. Minus 500 North Korean soldiers and a Russian general Valery Solotyuk. Actually, this week was a week of Russian weaknesses. Putin tried to threaten the world with Oreshnik when in reality he hit his own Russian economy the hardest with this so-called new intercontinental ballistic missile. This was also a week when we've managed to destroy two command posts in Belgorod and Kursk regions and even visited the launching grounds of Oreshnik with Ukrainian drones. We have observed a meeting of the NATO Secretary General Rutte with President Trump. We have neutralized Russian S400 radio location system and Ukraine launched a new super popular computer game Stalker 2. So let's discuss all of these important events from an ordinary Ukrainian perspective. My name is Anna, I'm from Ukraine, I'm in Ukraine, and if you want to see Russia defeated and if you want to protect yourself better against poisonous Russian narratives and their hybrid warfare in your countries, subscribe, join the community of the channel and share the videos that you like on your social media platforms. So let's start with this really big news that were actually printed in the Daily Mail. I will leave the link to the article in the description because it beautifully tells the story of one Russian general and 500 North Korean soldiers that disappeared because of the Storm Shadow. Storm Shadow are cool missiles that since recently we are allowed to use to defend ourselves, and this might have been their first strike in Kursk region. And they can develop really high speed, 600 miles per hour. They can reach 180 miles, and thus it makes Russia very vulnerable. We all know they don't have enough air defense systems. They did not plan that war will return back to where it belongs, to Russia. Also, they kind of put priorities, and all the Russian priority is definitely Putin. That's why his bunkers and his locations are well protected, but the rest of Russia, including since recently the front lines, is not working well. But most importantly, one of the main things that can help Ukraine, which is much smaller than Russia, defeat is technologies. And the technologies of Ukraine that we develop, our allies, missiles are definitely much better than old Soviet crap, and it's really difficult to track Storm Shadow because it has a GPS, it has specific systems that help it dodge air defense. So if it continues like that, soon Russia will run off of their generals. Remember, there are lots of generals lost in this war, and I am sure this influences the decisions made by the Russian army. They rarely confirm these losses, but somehow in a couple of months or half a year, they will post about such a loss. And actually lots of people in comments to this Daily Mail article say that it may be that Putin's strike of Oreshnik was a reaction to the fact that he lost not just 500 North Korean soldiers, but also a general. And there are rumors that another general from North Korea was wounded. So definitely it's very difficult for Russian propagandists to persuade that everything was just exactly as planned. Or Putin is the greatest enemy of Russia, and it was planned that way. Maybe he was hired by aliens to destroy this dark empire. Anyway, subscribe to see the collapse of the Kremlin. We will discuss that on the channel, I promise, with wine. Anyway, Oreshnik is a new intercontinental ballistic missile that they used when targeting Dnipro and when blackmailing the world. I will connect a separate video that tells more about Oreshnik and its influence on people's opinion and most importantly on the price of ruble in comparison to US dollar. But they claim it's a new missile, when in reality it looks like it's an old one, just with a new name and maybe some minor modifications. And Putin definitely uses it simply as a form of blackmail, because Iskander missiles that they target Ukraine with on a daily basis are also capable of carrying nuclear warheads, unfortunately. So it's not a change in anything, but an illustration. And you know that to survive, to reach some of their miserable goals, bullies love using fear. And the moment when you stop being afraid, they lose the powers, and then you see how actually vulnerable and easy to defeat they are. And I think this important moment is happening right now with our allies, both in North America, in Europe, and in different corners of the world, and of course in beautiful Australia and New Zealand. Greetings to all my viewers there. So all Putin wanted to do is to frighten people. He decided to rewrite this nuclear doctrine, but I need your attention right here, because his new nuclear doctrine actually illustrates that Putin is not confident in his new territorial gains, because according to the so-called Russian constitution, the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine are already a part of the Russian Federation, just the same as Moscow, Tula, or any other district. But when we talk about the use of the long-range missiles, Putin understands that Crimea and, let's say, Zaporizhia or Luhansk is different from Kursk or Belgorod. Do you see this huge flaw in how he pretends he sees his gains and what he actually understands about the situation? So if you think from the Putin's point of view that Crimea is Russia, we've been using Storm Shadow missiles and ATACMS and other things there for more than a year already. And he did not rewrite a doctrine, he did not target Oreshnik. So he clearly knows where the border of Ukraine is. 1991, and that's what we want and need, together with the defeat of Russia, demilitarization of Russia, and imprisonment of Putin or other. I hope you can guess. I am kind to YouTube and I don't say the things that I think. Share the videos that you like, help us spread more information about the Ukrainian battle in Putin's war against the West. And not just Putin's, but also Kim Jong-un's, his Iranian and Chinese counterparts. Let's be realistic. In his recent interview, I'm sorry if I hit the microphone. I didn't want to. I'm just like using too many gestures. That's me. So anyway, he is definitely speaking, General Zaluzhny, that we are already in the Third World War, because Ukraine is fighting not just against Russian soldiers, but against North Korean soldiers. They are on the ground. There are rumors they've crossed Ukrainian border a couple of times. So it's not just about the instruments of war that we use, but the real people on the ground. We don't have NATO soldiers, unfortunately, in Ukraine, and we have thousands of North Korean soldiers in the front lines. And you know what's important? There are rumors they are ready to send 100,000, which is an illustration of Russian weakness, which is an illustration of great losses, and also a tragic illustration that they don't value lives in authoritarian regimes. And if they don't value lives in authoritarian regimes, we keep destroying and neutralizing the evil in various command posts. One in Kursk that I have already told you about, and another one targeted was in Belgorod. But what is also interesting, Ukrainian drones reached a launching ground of Oreshnik intercontinental ballistic missile. And it's not the first time they did some loud explosive work there. It's far away in Astrakhan region, and it is a beautiful illustration how vulnerable, even important, almost secret Russian military objects are. So hopefully we will get more permissions to demilitarize this evil empire, and the world will become a better place, and Ukraine will be ready to protect people in different corners of the world if similar evil appears. Just last night we targeted another important object, Russian radar location system S400. These are new, these are bad, and it was neutralized in Kursk, thus making more Ukrainian territories safe and protecting us from Russian expansion. And what is interesting, I believe that more and more global leaders, apart from Scholz, see that Putin is extremely vulnerable, especially from the economic perspective. And when he used Oreshnik, we could clearly see the tremendous drop in already very weak Russian ruble. It costs, like, you have to pay 104 rubles for just $1, and it's difficult to buy them. And you remember that inflation is desperately growing, and despite the fact that they actually try to stop it with growing interest rates, which are already insane and lead to the bankruptcy of some construction businesses, and people don't know what to do with these prices when you cannot get butter, when you cannot get products that you need. And it actually resembles me the Soviet times, just before the collapse of the USSR. People had to stand in really long queues because of the lack of products, and most importantly, lack of money and extreme inflation. And it was because of unnecessary war in Afghanistan, because of oil prices falling. And it actually reminds me this moment in the modern Russian history greatly. By the way, today we have premiered a new series, Russian Paradox. And we worked hard with Sasha on this episode. I did some really long research and shared with you some very interesting, it was really interesting for me, observations about Russian psychic healers and all this crazy, irrational, mystical thinking in the Soviet Union, in Russian Empire, and today. Do check this new series. I will connect them here. And it actually tells the story about Putin's great fear of one shaman from Yakutia who wanted to come and expel demons from the Kremlin. So we clearly see that Putin is a demon and he will be expelled. And Ukrainians are doing really good job, diplomatic job, by releasing a new video game. The first one, Stalker, was super popular. It appeared in 2010, if I'm not mistaken, and a new episode appeared recently. And it is extremely funny because the developers decided to keep it in two versions, English and Ukrainian, without the Russian one. They abandoned a Russian market, a huge one, but it's obvious why. And it made me really laugh because you know how often Russians say that Ukrainian and Russian is the same languages, just a dialect. And literally, Russian gamers hate Ukrainian developers because they don't speak English and they don't understand Ukrainian. That is a very vivid argument, and I'm sure a good illustration. Stalker tells the story of Chernobyl, another catastrophe caused by Moscow negligence and super secrecy whenever you have a problem. Actually, lots of people suffered from this catastrophe because of Russian irresponsibility and the way they report about their failures. So the fact that you actually don't read anything about Russian economic, military problems does not mean they don't have them. Actually, they have great problems. And the greater problems they have, the more silent they are. And I was happy to see that The president-elect met with Rutte. Hopefully this will lead to some more positive decisions, and I'm sure we need each other in NATO. And when I say we, I mean like Ukraine in NATO too. Please support this video with your likes, share on your social media platforms. This helps debunk lots of evil Russian myths. Join me on Instagram, X, Threads, Discord and Blue Skies. I'm active on all of these platforms, and it's extremely important to remain united. Believe me, we can change a lot, even in the world of crazy politics. Thank you for buying me coffees, becoming my patrons and sponsors of the channel. Do check our merch shop for lots of good items that work well as reminders and conversation starters about Ukraine, and actually as good Christmas presents, very nice and very meaningful. And we have calendars for 2025 that tell the story of either names of Ukrainian months or the beauty of our nature, with QR codes when you can actually see more about the locations and how they were affected by this war. But most importantly, thank you for your constant support and true friendship. I always read your comments, I take your advice, and you make us all stronger. And I hope we are useful for you too as Ukraine. United we stand. Slava Ukraini!